Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm going to be testing an i3-6100 with a GTX 1060 6GB using 8 gigs of DDR4 2133 MHz RAM. As you can see there, dual channel, 2 sticks or 4 gigs, as you can see, with a 430 watt power supply, an EVGA 430 watt certified power supply, not bronze, not silver, nothing like that, just 80 plus, and I'm going to test some games on it. So first I'll be doing Batman Arkham Knight 1080p, high textures and shadows, low level of detail, since that's pretty much the draw distance. And I'm going to drive through the city a little bit, a little fighting, a little flying, since that's how the game stutters the most, by just moving fast through the map, by flying or driving the Batmobile. You'll see in a couple seconds some stutters that happen every now and then. But yeah, this game is not a proper port. As you can see there, a stutter, another one. But yeah, I mean, just while moving fast through the map, which is a big part of what this game is, it happens. So I'm going to drive a little bit behind that military truck to see if something else happens. There we drop below 60. So yeah, we drop a lot below 60, but the game can be much more smooth if we just cap it at 30 FPS. So the CPU doesn't get that much stress and we can get less stutters, but the stutters will be still there. It's part of the game so far, it seems. Now I'm testing Battlefield 1 multiplayer on a very CPU intensive map, 1080p, 90 degrees FOV. And in the advanced tab I'm going to change to the ultra preset, and I'm going to lower the mesh quality to medium, since mesh quality is pretty much the draw distance and the quality of the meshes. So we go back into the game, and as you can see we're at 60 with some drops here and there. I played 5 matches on this map and this was the most intensive thing I found so far, but it can drop below 60 much more than this. It depends on how intense the fight is. In this case it wasn't that intensive, but if you are in a rainy moment or something like that and you get, I don't know, many tanks fighting at once, a lot of explosions, all that kind of stuff, very close together, you can drop as low as 45 FPS. The thing is, I couldn't find a match as demanding as that. So far I played like 5 matches and this was the best I could do to get more stress to the CPU. But as you can see, the GPU usage drops a lot when we get drops below 60. But still, it's very playable. It's still better than consoles. I saw consoles dropping even lower than 45 FPS and they are playing at 900p on PS4 and 720p on Xbox One. I'm not sure about the PS4 Pro, but I don't care. But yeah, so far is totally playable. CSGO, I'll do 1080p, pretty much the highest setting with 4 times MSIA, since we have a lot of GPU horsepower to spare. So as you can see here, we're getting over 120 FPS. And as you can see, the GPU usage is very low, it's 35%, or very close to that. It depends on which part of the map you are, or which map you are playing. On Nuke and Train, those matches were a little more intensive, but I don't really have more servers to play those maps. Those have like 400 milliseconds of ping, so it doesn't make sense for me to test those. So this is the best I can do. But yeah, the game runs fine, it's over 120 FPS, so the latency is very low, which is awesome. So yeah, this is a good PC for CSGO so far. I'm using some commands, they are in the description below to launch the game, so keep that in mind. Now I'm testing Doom 1080p, TSS-AA8TX, high motion blur, doesn't really matter, FOV 115 degrees, OpenGL 4.5, since Vulkan runs worse. I'm using ultra settings with nightmare textures. Well, I'm going to test one of the levels in Hell, so we can have the worst performance. So as you can see now, we are getting over 60 FPS, and I didn't see any drops below that so far, which is awesome. It seems that this game doesn't use that much CPU. is very close to 100%, but it doesn't make the frame rate drop below 60 so far. I didn't have any issues with Doom. So yeah, pretty good recommendation if you have this PC. Now I'm testing GTA 5, 1080p, FXAA on, well, all the sliders maxed, very high textures, shaders, shadows, reflections, water, particles, grass on very high too, pose effects on high, soft test shadows, depth of field, desolation and ambient occlusion on high, no advanced graphics, just to show you that the CPU is the bottleneck. And as you can see now we are over 60 FPS. Let's see when we get some explosions. So far so good. But yeah, the i3 6100 can get us very close to 60, but it won't be 60 FPS locked. There will be some times when the game will drop below that, especially when moving fast through the map or flying a helicopter. But as you can see, the GPU usage is very low, it's below 60%. Sometimes it's around 70%, but just moving fast through the map kills the frame rate. When we are very fast into a car, as you can see there, we were very close to drop below 60, but we didn't. But yeah, so far so good. There we drop below 60. It depends on where you are, the density of the traffic, the number of explosions, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so far the i3 6100 is doing pretty well. It's doing better than the i3 4150, which was to be expected. As you can see there, we dropped below 60, but not really noticeable. And now the final test, just flying the chopper. As you can see now, we're below 60. We're at 52, 53. The lowest I saw it drop was around 50 FPS while flying the helicopter through the city. So keep that in mind. As you can see there, we are below 60. So it's mostly a thing of just draw distances or many explosions at once, but it ran much better than I expected. Rainbow Six Siege 1080p and well, 90 degrees FOV and the maximum settings with the Ultra texture pack, which is downloadable content, which is free, using temporal filtering. So let's see the frame rate, shall we? Okay, so now as you can see, we are about 60 all the time. The CPU usage is very high, and the GPU usage too, which I wasn't really expecting this to be. It runs much better than I expected. It's always above 60 FPS, even with some explosions going on very close to you. So yeah, Ubisoft did a great job with this one. It runs totally fine.
Operator standing.
Just cause 3 1080p, the maximum settings, except level of detail factor, that will be kept on medium, the rest on the highest possible. And I'm going to try some explosions and flying through the city. So here I'm landing. As you can see, we're getting over 60 FPS. So let's now explode all this stuff to show what the wheel's performance is. And as you can see now, we are dropping below 60 a ton, as low as 40 FPS, for what I could see. And now we're flying through the city, which was one of the other CPU intensive things I found to do. And we explode another place. The lowest I saw this game drop for the time I played this on stream, testing this same build, was around 35 FPS. When I was just flying like this into a city. There's not much else to show about this. The game runs, yeah, pretty much between 30 and 75 FPS. Now HITMAN, I'll do 1080p maximum settings except level of detail, which I kept on medium to simplify the game for the CPU. So the i3 has less work to do and we get more than 30 FPS. So as you can see, I'm using the highest setting with level of detail on medium. And I'm in Marrakesh, which has the highest number of NPCs I saw in this game so far, so it's harder for the CPU to process everything. And as you can see, we're getting over 30 FPS, but the GPU usage is very low, it's below 60%. So that's CPU bottleneck. As you can see, the CPU is limiting the GPU. With an i5 or better, you'll get much more FPS. You'll probably get 60s if you lower the settings a little bit with an i5. But yeah, as you can see, it doesn't run bad at all. I suggest just capping the game at 30 FPS and you'll be fine. The game looks fantastic. Now I'm going to put the AI to work, and as you can see, we're still at 30 FPS. Now Mafia 3, I'll do 1080p on a mix between low and high, so the FPS are capped at 60. VSync off, ambient occlusion on high, motion blur off, geometry detail on low. I'll switch it to low, shadows on high, reflections on low, and volumetric effects on low, anti-aliasing 2. And this game is very inconsistent, even capping it at 30 FPS doesn't help. You get a lot of stutters, especially on the city, like I'm driving right now. You get between 28 or 26 to 60 FPS, very inconsistent. I suggest capping the game at 30 FPS and hope for the best.
Hey! There's our officers over here! Any available units, reports of a hit and run downtown. Response requested.
Then The Witcher 3, I'll use almost the maximum settings, but I kept shadows on high and full HP visibility range on high. I also use SSAO instead of HBAO+. And I'll show you some parts with a lot of foliage, then parts of the city. So let's start, shall we? So here, as you can see, we're above 60, but when we are getting closer and closer to Novigrad, the performance will be getting worse and worse, since we are getting into a more CPU bound area. As you can see there, the CPU usage is increasing and the GPU usage is decreasing. That's why we are not above 70 FPS. But once you keep going into the city, you will see some drops below 60, but nothing really that bad. It keeps around 50 FPS at the worst, so it's not bad at all, only on cities. Then when you are in the wilderness, it will be fine, you'll be above 60, no problems whatsoever. You'll only have problems here in the city and on big fights with more than 5 monsters at once. So yeah, the game runs very good.
By killing or done a runner?
By order of the hierarch, whosoever conceals a mage in their home.
Now project cards, I'll use 1080p on a mix between high and ultra. As you can see here, 1080p. I'm using SMAA, the rest on high, shadows on ultra, well, the grass on medium, particles on high. As you can see, I mix between high and ultra pretty much. So I'm running here with another 19 opponents, so keep that in mind. That kills the CPU. The more opponents you put into the game, the higher the CPU usage. So if you want better FPS, over 60 FPS all the time, you might want to play with 14 opponents instead of 20 in total. But yeah, the game is playable. I have no complaints with this one. You can crank up the settings even more, because as you can see, the GPU usage is very low, it's below 50%. So yeah, my suggestion, just use less opponents and you'll be fine. Assassin's Creed Unity 1080p on a mix between medium and high. I'm using medium environment quality since that's what helps the CPU to get better frames, ultra textures, high shadows, SSAO instead of HBAO, FXAA, and bloom turn on. So we are here in Paris, we're going to jump down. So the problem here is that there are just too many NPCs and the game is not a very good port. It improved a lot after patches, as you can see. But once I start moving through the city, I'm not going to maintain 60 FPS anytime soon. It just stresses the CPU way too much. After I kill these two guards, you'll see. They were way too ambitious with the number of NPCs. So yeah, as you can see now, we are around 50 FPS. Which in my opinion is not bad at all. You can even crank up the settings more. So yeah, now I'm running into an area with even more NPCs. And as you can see, it's not that bad actually. I mean, we're below 60, but we're pretty much at 50 FPS. So my suggestion is just cap the game at 40 FPS, 45. So you have some room to spare, but yeah, totally playable. Watch Dogs 2, I'll do 1080p with pretty much high settings. The only thing I kept on the lowest was geometry, since that affects the CPU a lot. So yeah, I also use temporal filtering with SMAA, and I'm going just to drive with the police chasing me, so we stress the CPU as much as we can. So as you can see here, we're at 60, but once we start driving and just fighting with the cops, we get drops below 60, as you can see right now. The CPU usage is very high and the GPU usage is decreasing. So we are below 80% usage, as you can see. So that's what makes us get below 60 FPS. This is not a great PC port for 60 FPS so far. For 30 FPS is fine, but 60s are very hard to maintain. I had problems maintaining 60 FPS even with an i7 4790, so keep that in mind. This game is not the best port, but it's a very new game, so I decided to test it anyway. You can still get pretty awesome graphics if you care about that. Just crank it up, cap it at 30, and you have better graphics than a PS4 or Xbox One. So yeah, that works, I guess. If you like that, just crank up the settings, as I said, or the resolution to 1440p, and you can play 30 FPS just fine. Now Forza Horizon 3, as you can see I'm using the i3-6100 and the GTX 1060 6GB. I'm going to show you the GPU and CPU usage while on windowed. The game looks exactly the same. In the resolution, it's the same resolution even if I'm on windowed mode, so keep that in mind. I'm using 1080p. So what you see in there is the internal resolution of 1080p. And on the right you can see the task manager, so you see the CPU usage that Cam does, because some people complained about that, so I just kept it over there so you can monitor it yourself. So as you can see, I'm using 1080p, unlock frame rates, which is not a good idea. And then advanced settings, I use the highest setting except MSAA, which I kept it off, and the windshield reflections I kept them on high. The reflections I kept them on high, and the world color level of detail I kept it on low since that affects the CPU. So as you can see now, the GPU usage is very low, it's like 50%, and the GPU and the CPU usage is very high, as you can see. So the frame rate suffers as a result. I'm not getting anywhere close to 60 FPS. and I want, and the frame time in this game is very variable, so it's very hard to control. Plus I'm terrible at driving in this game since I didn't play it for a while. So I'm sorry about the gameplay, first of all. But yeah, my suggestion is just capping the game at 30 FPS, because the frame time at 30 FPS is perfect. It's like a console, which is a pretty awesome frame time. So yeah, I'll cap it at 30 now, so you can see the difference. It's not inconsistent at all. So yeah, now we cap it at 30. And there we go. As you can see now, it's very consistent. Much more consistent than it used to be. And you can crank up the settings if you want. You can use better reflections, better car quality, all that kind of stuff, since we're just playing at 30 FPS. And you can even enable MSAA if you want. And finally, I'm just going to show you the CPU usage from CAM. It uses very little CPU, as you can clearly see right now. It uses 3% at the most, but as you can see, yeah, there is a small hit to the CPU usage, so it's a very accurate test. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with this AC Unity short gameplay. It's about to end, and I'm going to test Witcher 3 too to show you the CPU usage. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, and see you next time.
Your revolutionary brothers and sisters need to eat! And yet here you are,